Number 10. Who is the Beyond Corporation? The Beyond Corporation, to expand on them and introduce them to you a little bit more, is basically the mastermind behind this whole operation. They seem to be wanting to turn the role of Spider-Man into a corporate gig. They managed to get their hands on the Spider-Man name and trademark, and as a result have selected Ben Reilly to act as their own Spider-Man. Instead of approaching the Spider-Man, Peter Parker, or also the Spider-Man, Miles Morales. Why? Well, we might get into the layers of that a little bit later, but Beyond basically tells Ben that they chose him because he has a strong will, and that's what they're looking for, someone who can basically get things done. They give Ben a swanky apartment, a whole team of comms to help him in the field, and super advanced tech to assist him in his heroics. They also send him out on missions, both to help and save the public, and to help and save Beyond at times. Also, honestly, if you want to be introduced to Beyond before jumping into issue 75 of Amazing Spider-Man, where this story begins, you can check out the final story in issue 74 of ASM, the final issue of the previous run. And why not flip back a page before you jump into the final story? There's a really fantastic Spider-Man recap for you to enjoy. It's really great. I loved it. I want to frame it somewhere. It's so cute. Number 9. Dreams. Something that I think is important to note when it comes to this story is the weird recurring dreams that seem to be showing up consistently, and the possibility that Peter Parker and Ben Reilly are sharing these same dreams. The recurring one that we keep coming back to in terms of themes and just what actually happens in the dream involves Uncle Ben. This is a particularly important moment in the story as it starts the whole thing off in issue number 75 of the Amazing Spider-Man series. At first it seems as though Peter is talking about a dream he is having, but later we see that Ben seems to be plagued with the exact same dream, featuring a faceless Uncle Ben Parker. Usually lengthy stories like this start off with something that sets the stage for the themes and often hint at what will be built up, where the story is moving towards. The dream thematically seems to deal with acknowledging who you are, confronting that, embracing that, and ultimately deals with legacy, something that both Ben and Peter seem to be struggling with at the time. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear more about Spider-Man Beyond, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I got a lot more facts to throw at you. There's a lot going on in this story. Number 8. Ben is back. Ben is back, baby, but what does this mean for his character? Where is he coming from? Where did we last see him? These are all great questions. Let me try to answer some of them for you by giving you the full picture. Last we saw Ben, he was fighting to redeem himself after becoming a villain and taking up the mantle of Jackal. As Jackal, Ben was working to do what he thought was right by bringing back a bunch of dead folks as clones and trying to perfect the cloning process. This would help not just him, but a ton of other folks returned as clones. Of course, he kinda ended up creating a solution which allowed him to exert control over said clones. As Peter saw it, Jackal Ben had things kinda twisted. What he saw was all the power with none of the responsibility. In the end, Peter defeated Ben, refusing to join him, and Ben realized the error of his ways and fought to atone for his mistakes. At one point, he had his sins completely cleansed, as they were explained as happening because of basically a corruption of his psyche. Now he's back, but he doesn't seem to be too much worse the wear, considering all that happened more recently in his past. In fact, his time as Jackal remains kind of untouched for much of this story, although Ben does seem to be struggling emotionally. Number 7. Forge multitasks. I love Forge so much. And I love this new X-Men team we've gotten out of the last election at the Hellfire Gala. It is so awesome. It's just the more I think about this team, the more I'm like, this is actually a really cool team. This is the moment that has me itching to read more of this team together though, despite the fact that I believe, sadly, Jerry Dugan is actually going to be leaving this book. In issue number 13 of the X-Men, which is still written by Dugan at this point, we get a look into how the Eternals attacked Krakoa and attempted to defeat the Mutant Island. The Eternals sick giant kaiju-like beings on Krakoa, also Eternals themselves. These giant Eternals are known as the Hex. That's the name of their subgroup. The Hex attack Krakoa, and Forge is not even intimidated into donning battle armor in response. That's just so Forge. Instead, he brings out the big guns and he waits for the right moment to strike while lounging in tropical attire and sipping a drink out of a pineapple. It's a fantastic moment that feels super Forge. Forge successfully takes out one of the giant Eternals that looks like a dragon. Unfortunately, he does only have one magic nanite bullet, and that was it. So the X-Men are gonna have to figure out what to do about the rest of the army of Hex who are still headed towards the island. Number 6. Beyond's true motives. So, why does Beyond really want Ben Reilly as their Spider-Man? And do they really just want to make the world a better place, or do they have ulterior motives? How do they make money? And what's really going on in the scientific and experimental sandwich department? Those poor sandwiches! Someone free them, please. As time goes on, Beyond becomes more and more suspicious, and not just to you or I, the readers. I mean, I think we're all suspicious from the beginning, right? But also for Ben and Dr. Octopus. After Doc Ock's team up with Aunt May, he's hot on the trail of Beyond, who he believes has stolen his work. Ben is sent after Otto to apprehend him after he gets his hand on a very valuable asset of Beyond's, a drive with sensitive and pertinent information, which Beyond refuses to fill Ben in about when it comes to what the contents of this drive are. Ben manages to defeat Doc Ock, but Otto gives him a choice. He has made it so that Ben can actually access the drive's files without Beyond knowing. Ben can either look at the drive or simply return it without taking a peek at all. Of course, Ben is already suspicious at this point, so he chooses to look. He does not like what he finds. It turns out Ben wasn't chosen for his strong will, just the opposite actually. He was chosen because Beyond considers him malleable, due to him being psychologically compromised. Number 5. Vigilantism outlawed. Despite the fact that Daredevil made Fisk promise to stop his pursuit of vigilantes, Wilson instead has continued on that path, but decided to outlaw only those who refuse to join up with the government. In other words, if you are a supervillain or a superhero who is a willing ally yourself with the city of New York and with Mayor Fisk, you are pretty much fine. But if you decide that joining up with a villain like Kingpin is not something you're interested in, you are considered an outlaw by the mayor, government, and law enforcement. Number 4. Miles gets served. And I don't mean he gets served some like delicious hamburgers or anything tasty like that. I mean he gets served in the legal sense. Miles Morales has also some Beyond tie-ins you'll be happy to hear, and to find out what's going on with him in the Beyond storyline, you can check out his own series from issues 33 to 36. Miles also makes an appearance in issue 81 of ASM, where he and Ben duke it out before teaming up to take on monster/villain Rhizome. However, while Ben ultimately decides not to tell Miles he should consider changing his name after Beyond told him to, because Beyond only wants Ben to use the Spider-Man mantle, and well, I mean, they do own it, Miles does later on get served by Beyond, unfortunately, as we find out in his own series. And that is a whole thing that he has to deal with in his own series, on top of dealing with other hero-related problems. It's a lot going on for Miles right now. He just had his own clone saga, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. Number 3. Heartless Magneto. Magneto is killed during the events of X-Men Red issue number 5. He puts up a good fight, but in the end Uranos wins, getting him right in the heart. But here's the thing about Arako. As we learn in that issue, you should always confirm the kill when you're dealing with anybody from Arako. These are hard mutants cut from a different cloth, and so it is no surprise that, other than Iska, a few people are going to survive the brutality of this, especially as Uranos only has a limited time on the planet and foolishly does not confirm each and every kill, which, you know, he probably should have done that. A few do survive, including Xylo and Lotus Logos of the Great Ring, and of course, Magneto. Magneto may have been punched through the heart and no longer have one, but he has his powers and iron in his blood, and that is enough for him to basically will his blood to keep moving through his body, using the iron to kind of create, I don't know, like it's just like a glowing orb, but to me I kind of think of it as like an engine that'll replace his heart. Of course, he'd probably have to keep thinking about it because he'd be using his power to move the blood. Magneto is just always being a badass is basically the moral of the story, and it's so cool. It's so cool to read. Number 2. Black Cat and Mary Jane team up. Black Cat and Mary Jane need to team up to go on a heist? Black Cat and Mary Jane is a team up we've been waiting for a long time, and while these two often do not get along, I personally am here for the day when Felicia and MJ can just like be friends instead of just fighting over Peter all the time. Maybe this team up is a step in that direction, maybe not, but it sure is a fun one. If you need more reasons to read Beyond, this is one of them. Bam! Read this issue and enjoy the team up of these two. Remember, this is an event where all the tie-ins are relevant. Peter's life may even hang in the balance, but you'll have to read it to find out. Number 1. The unraveling of Ben Reilly. Remember how I said that Ben's time as Jackal seems to be mainly untouched? Well, later on in this story we find out kinda why that is. In issue 86 of ASM, we learn that Ben actually allowed Beyond to wipe his memory of his time as Jackal, which is why he didn't really know that his therapist, Dr. Kafka, was actually a clone, one he himself created. Yeah, Kafka had actually been working to try and rebuild Ben's framework when it comes to his mind, because the whole mind wipe thing is kind of ill-advised in her professional opinion. It's dangerous as it could cause Ben's personality to collapse because he's a clone. And well, I think you know where we're going with this revelation. After Ben learns more about Beyond's motives and begins to question who and what he's really working for and why, they decide it best if they remove recent memories to protect themselves from Ben's suspicions, and to protect Ben, I guess, so that he can keep working for them. And yeah, it doesn't go well. Memories beyond what they are scrubbing seem to unravel and disappear. What will Ben be like when he comes to? I really think you should jump into the story with us. Number 10. Mike Murdock. Mike Murdock used to simply be a disguise that Matt would use whenever he needed to go undercover. Mike was essentially Matt pretending to be his long-lost twin brother, Mike. His twin brother who wasn't blind, but did happen to look just like Matt. This was a guise that Matt would slip in and out of for years whenever it was useful or convenient for him to do so. However, recently in the comics, Mike was actually given a full life of his own when the Inhuman Reader accidentally used his powers to bring Mike to life. For real. Allowing him to exist separate from Matt, believing he was in fact Matt Murdock's brother. Long-lost twin brother. Reader described Mike as a fragment, and initially sought to erase Mike's existence. In fact, Matt himself also attempted to do so as well, but in the end decided against it and chose to let Mike go after backing him into a corner, unable to get rid of the fragment who had become essentially Matt's real-life twin brother. I mean, when you have a twin brother, why let that go? Just let it be a thing. Mike appears in Devil's Reign, and it is important to be aware that he is now a separate entity from Matt, one who also allied himself with Fisk in the past for protection, and is good friends with Butch, who is believed to be Fisk's illegitimate son and is currently the new Kingpin of New York. Number 9. Elektra as Daredevil. More recently in the comics, Elektra has actually become Daredevil as well. This all went down as Matt Murdock was preparing to go to prison. To keep Hell's Kitchen safe, he'd set up a plan where Tony Stark could bid to buy the borough of New York. This plan, however, didn't go exactly as he'd hoped, when instead Elektra decided to outbid Stark for the area. Despite the fact that she had recently remembered Daredevil's true identity and had an argument with Matt about him surrendering himself and going to prison, Elektra offered to be the one to protect Hell's Kitchen, while Matt did what he felt he must do. After Matt went to prison, Elektra took up the mantle of Daredevil. So in case you were wondering why there are two Daredevils and why Elektra was DD as well, here is your answer. And something important to note going into this series is that there is Matt Murdock DD and Elektra DD, so two Daredevils. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists about Devil's Reign, it is still ongoing and there's lots still to talk about, so be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Mayor Fisk. In case you weren't aware, Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, is now mayor, and has been for a little while in the comics. He ended up being elected as the mayor of New York in part by winning over the masses, but mainly by fixing the vote to ensure his victory. He promised the people of New York that he would outlaw Vigilantism and fight to bring self-titled heroes like the Punisher and even soups like Spider-Man to justice. Daredevil pretended to join Fisk, but intended to use his position to betray Wilson and capture him, banding together with fellow heroes to take him down. However, this plan didn't go quite according to plan. Fisk was expecting such a thing to happen and instead had the heroes arrested. For a time he was in a coma and Matt Murdock took over as mayor, but once Fisk recovered, he took back the title and the responsibilities of the office. And Wilson Fisk also has designs on another, even bigger government role and office for himself, which you'll find out about in this event. Number 7. The hottest couple returns. Aunt May and Doc Ock, of course. Oh, did you think I was going to say like Spider-Man and Black Cat? No. That isn't a thing currently. But Aunt May and Doc Ock do get a pretty steamy and fun team up in issue 80 Point Bay. What, you don't believe me that they're the hottest couple in comics? Pfft, please, it says it right on the cover. Covers never lie to us, right? right? This team up involves Aunt May and Doc Ock getting together to help save Peter's life, with May calling in a favor. Also, I love ruthless and determined Aunt May in this whole plot point. Aunt May is kind of a badass here. This tie-in, by the way, is important to the plot. All of them kind of are for Beyond. So if you're wanting to join us on this roller coaster of a ride, make sure you read the tie-ins and all the point bays. I like to call them point bays, but B is also an acceptable pronunciation in my books, considering it's short for Beyond, so B. I just like saying point bay. Number 6. Typhoid Mary Fisk. A while back, Wilson Fisk was attempting to use newfound power to bring back his beloved Vanessa, but was dissuaded from this plan when he was forced to consider if his wife Vanessa would have actually wanted to be brought back. And I mean, let's say she did. Would she even want to see Fisk, let alone be with him? As a result of this revelation, Fisk attempted to resurrect his and Vanessa's son Richard instead. This didn't work out as he planned, but the good news is that he found a way to move forward with his love life. The fact that Daredevil's identity was also wiped clean from his mind and his personal files likely also helped this love connection to grow. That is right, Fisk ended up partnering up romantically with his longtime right-hand woman and partner in crime, Typhoid Mary. The two of them even got married and now are partners in every sense of the word. The only problem is that Mary's trauma, or perhaps something else, seems to be blocking out some of the memories of their romantic past. Number 5. The Five are broken. Wow, I didn't even intend to put the 5 at 5, but here we are. When Krakoa is attacked, Jack of Knives is also deployed to kill as many as he can and of course get the Five, who Prime Eternal Druig knows about from his alliance with Orcus. The shocking part is that they actually succeed in this. Egg falls and is unable to be protected during this attack. The good news is Egg had made some extra eggs before he died, meaning that the Five, even without one of their key members, was able to actually bring him back to life, thank goodness. But for a moment, the Five were broken, and for a few moments upon reading Judgment Day issue number 1, you likely were like me and you lived in fear that the resurrection days of Krakoa were over. It was a really close one there for a second. Number 4. Kingpin's Thunderbolts. Something we actually also saw happening during the King in Black event was Kingpin pulling together his own team of Thunderbolts after acquiring the team name. His version of the Thunderbolts, like many other iterations of the team, features supervillains who are acting as heroes. Kinda. Of course, in this case, they are supervillains who are acting as heroes on behalf of Kingpin himself, a major supervillain in the comics. So take that with a grain of salt. But all in all, it's pretty interesting. This isn't Hawkeye's Thunderbolts team. The Thunderbolts here are also working with the police of New York City in an attempt to keep order and to take down any illegal vigilantes who are out on the streets. Kingpin's Thunderbolts team, since it was first brought together, has included Rhino, Taskmaster, Star, Mr. Fear, Bartrock the Leaper, Snakehead, Ampere, Man-Bull, Fool Killer, Mr. Hyde, Grizzly, Figment, US Agent, Shocker, Dr. Octopus, Electro, and Agony. Many teammates have also died during their time serving on Kingpin's Thunderbolts, so he doesn't have a great track record for keeping people alive right now. And hence why there's been so many of them. They come on, they die, he's like, let me get somebody else. Number 3. Queen Goblin. Queen Goblin is a new character who was introduced in ASM issue 88. But who is behind the mask? If it wasn't spoiled for you in the solicits, this is a revelation that may just rock the entire Beyond event. Still, I'm not gonna spoil this one for you. I also talked about Queen Goblin on my top 10 goblins list if you want to learn more about the design and the idea for her character, but without any spoilers still. But I will say that her identity could be something that will shake the Beyond Corporation to its very core. So definitely a character appearance that you won't want to miss, and you'll probably be very interested in what she's up to. Number 2. Purple Man. So how is Kingpin managing to get all the people of New York to stand with him, considering how wild everything is getting, and how he's attempting to take on some of the most beloved superheroes of New York? Well, he has more than a few tricks up his sleeve when it comes to his control over New York City. One very powerful one is the Purple Man, aka Zebediah Killgrave, who despite seemingly dropping dead in issue 17 of the 2016 Jessica Jones series in a final moment of atonement, is actually still alive. I know. He's got a really powerful healing factor, and it turned out that one of his purple children actually manipulated Captain Marvel into merely thinking she had thrown his corpse up into the sun so that he could use his father's corpse for his own means. This inevitably ended up leading to Purple Man escaping, ending up back in prison at the Raft, and then ultimately falling into the hands of Mayor Wilson Fisk, who used Killgrave's influence for his own means. Number 1. The Avengers' mayoral candidate. Wilson Fisk and Matt Murdock haven't been the only only one seemingly showing an interest in politics and acting as mayor of New York, or at least aiming to become mayor of New York perhaps. The Avengers also have their own plan when it comes to beating Mayor Fisk. They want to nominate their own eligible candidate to become mayor of New York. Initially, Iron Man's plan was to run for mayor as billionaire Tony Stark, but fortunately they came up with something even better. Their current pick for candidate just so happens to be fan favorite street level hero Luke Cage. You know, I also want to see Luke Cage as mayor of New York, so I'm really hoping that this plan works. That sounds like an awesome story in and of itself that I would definitely want to read. They're going to have their work cut out for them, unfortunately, when it comes to fighting against Fisk, who, as we said, is using Purple Man's influence to bend the city to his own will, and important people around him to his own will. But I think nominating Cage for mayor is a very solid plan, so long as they can find a way to get New York somewhat unbrainwashed and back to normal. Hopefully. They're gonna have to probably take a lot of stuff away from Fisk before this will be possible, but I believe in Luke Cage as mayor. Number 10, The Machine. Well, this is technically a big moment and revelation from the Eternals series by Kieran Gillen that precedes the AXE event. Some of you may not have been reading Eternals, so I figured it was still an important one to include here because it's really relevant and really cool. But also, go read the latest Eternals series because it is amazing, and honestly, it's too short-lived for how awesome it was. You should go read it. I wish Kieran Gillen could just keep writing Eternals for, I don't know, into the foreseeable future. But I gotta say, I am happy that we have him on Immortal X-Men, and you know, if we gotta have one or the other, I get it, but Eternals was so good. In Eternals, we learned about how the Machine actually has its own personality and its own voice. The Machine being the thing that actually resurrects the Eternals every time they die. And honestly, I think it has become one of my favorite characters in the Eternals series. Machine is so cool and so sassy sometimes. In AXE, the Machine serves as a kind of narrator at times, which is also really fun and super cool. Honestly, you could just read this event just for that narration and likely be pretty content with it. That's how good the narration is. While Neil Gaiman and John Romita Jr. actually created the Machine in Volume 3 of the Eternals, Gillen actually helped give it an amazing voice and characterization in his 5th volume of that series. Number 9, Eternals vs. Mutants. This really isn't just about Eternals even versus X-Men. This conflict extends way beyond that, as we learn in AXE Eve of Judgment issue number 1. Here it's revealed that Prime Eternal Druig has an agenda against all mutants. It turns out he wants to kill them all. Why? Well, because he claims the mutants are actually deviants. That is, that they have grown to reach beyond what they should. They have deviated excessively, which is, after all, what Eternals are meant to fight against as one of their own prime directives. Druig, however, doesn't really care as much about killing mutants, deviants, as he does about cementing his own position as Eternal Prime. The Machine was really hoping that Druig would be content to have simply achieved this title, which happened, by the way, in the Eternal series. If you're wondering where you can find that story, like I said, you should read it. But alas, Druig is too paranoid to feel secure and content and wants some accolades to add to his name, so he can be like the greatest Prime Eternal ever, which he could get if he destroyed the mutants in the name of what the Eternals are meant to stand for, eliminating deviants. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you should go check out our new channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. It is really cool, and we want you to go and give all the anime manga love that you have over to the channel. And over to James. Say hi to James while you're over there. Number 8. The Secret of the Eternals' Resurrection. This is another thing that, like the Machine's quirky personality, was actually covered in the Eternals series. However, for those of you who haven't gotten there yet, this is also covered in Judgment Day, more specifically being recapped in AXE Eve of Judgment, so you can, be in on the secret, because it's pretty integral to what's happening here with the Eternals. And so for some, this is probably a pretty big revelation because, like I said, I don't think everyone that's reading this event has read Eternals. What we learn here is that the Machine actually resurrects mutants by sacrificing a human life from Earth to do so. This is the reason that Phastos is actually imprisoned, kinda. He attempted to destroy the Machine upon learning of this revelation, but he didn't realize that the Machine is actually intrinsically tied to the Earth. In fact, it is the Earth. So destroying the Machine actually means destroying the world. But initially, Phastos thought it would actually be a solution for Eternals' immortality and actually save a ton of human lives that would, be sacrificed to resurrect Eternals whenever they fell. Icarus also must live with this revelation, as must the rest of the Eternals, and for Icarus it's especially difficult as his interpretation of one of their prime directives to protect the machine was that this also meant protecting the humans of Earth. So you can see his contradictory dilemma, because to keep the machine going means you're gonna have to kill some humans. It's not great. Number 7. Daredevil's secret identity. Daredevil's secret identity is back under wraps, and if you're wondering how all this happened because you remember him literally admitting to being Daredevil, it went down in the purple story arc of Charles Soule's 2016 run on Daredevil. Here, Daredevil attempts to help the purple children, Kilgrave's kids, who when joined together turn purple and get their father's powers. Some of the children are being held prisoner so that the purple man can harness their power to use for himself, making him impossibly strong to face. Daredevil, who normally has the willpower to resist the Purple Man's commands, actually finds himself unable to, as he struggles with his own identity and his sense of self. In the end, Daredevil is able to find himself and defeat Kilgrave in the process, and the Purple Children, feeling bad for DD, who admitted in a court of law and is known the world over as then former attorney Matt Murdock, decide to use their power to help him, making everyone forget that Matt and Daredevil are one and the same person, and giving Matt back his secret identity. And when I say everyone, that includes Wilson Fisk, which is a major part of the reason that Fisk is so obsessed with Daredevil currently. He wants to know who he is, desperately seeking to unmask and destroy him, which sounds disturbingly familiar to past events, which didn't end well for Matt last time. Number 6. Icarus makes a deal. But not just any deal. Icarus talks to Jean Grey and in so doing decides that he will help Jean with Druig's invasion of Krakoa. To defeat the Hex, the mutants must venture to where they're being transported to Earth from, but there are a few problems. 1. Only Eternals can actually enter that area, and 2. Uranos, one of the most deadly Eternals, is currently there, surrounded by an armory of endless weapons. So yeah, might be kinda tricky for even someone as powerful as Jean to deal with that and get out alive. Oh, and while Icarus is willing to help, the deal only stands for him to get the mutants in there even, who need to be ready at a moment's notice to go with him, if Jean can ensure that no Eternals are killed. In typical Icarus fashion, being extremely just to a fault, especially with the revelation about the machine plaguing his conscience. If any Eternals are killed, the deal will be off. Number 5. Janine is back. Not only has Ben returned, but he's also got his very own version of MJ, who is joining him along for the ride. We also get to see the return of Janine Godby in the final story of issue 74 of ASM, the lead into the Beyond event. Now for those who don't remember Janine, she was actually Ben's love interest back in the 1990s, and we haven't really seen her since then. She was on the run after she was severely mistreated by her father and basically killed him in self-defense. Her real name is Elizabeth Tyne, but she chose to change it to Janine Godby, because, she on the run. And she still actually goes by Janine now, preferring it to her given name, probably because she associates that with a lot of trauma. Janine eventually felt that she needed to confront her past and accept the responsibility of her actions after listening to a speech that Ben gave to Kane about doing, well, just that. As a result, Janine turned herself in and confessed to killing her father. She ended up in prison and has been there till, well, now, when Beyond was able to make a deal to have her put in their care instead. During Beyond, she has mostly been confined to her and Ben's apartment, as she is still a criminal serving time. Nicer surroundings for sure, but she still acknowledges that she's pretty much just imprisoned. However, after developing her own suspicions and secretly being given the important Beyond drive from Ben, who then goes missing, the time comes for Janine to break out. Number 4. Iska the Unbeaten changes sides. In X-Men Red issue number 5, we learn of what happens to Arako. This issue, by the way, is crazy, it's so good. We know from the main Judgment Day series that Arako was attacked by Uranos, and presumably hit pretty hard by them. And if you're thinking, it's Arako, how bad can it be? The answer is really freaking bad. Uranos is released from his cell by Druig for exactly 1 hour. Within 20 minutes, he had already put a huge dent in Arako. Iska herself during the hour is forced to change sides due to her mutant power, which isn't a good sign. Iska's power, for those that don't know, is that she'll always win, but this means that her power has told her that Arako winning is not possible if she's turning on them. So that's a really bad sign. Good for Iska though, because she actually does win. She survives, she gets to live another day, with Nightcrawler teleporting her away to help Arako's odds after she turns on them. Nightcrawler's solution is basically like, well, if Iska isn't here, then her power can't like affect the outcome. You know what I mean? Bad for Arako, as they now have to face Uranos without either Iska or Nightcrawler, and Iska also ended up breaking the Great Ring of Arako when she killed Idil, one of her fellow council members. The really bad part with all of this though is that Uranos is successful and kills almost everyone on Arako. And Arako in X-Men Red was revealed to not believe in resurrection. So they have rejected that Krakoan gift, and as such, all of those who died will basically never come back to us. At least these mutants aren't going to come back from mutant resurrection protocols. Number 3, Superior 4. The Superior 4 started as another team of Mayor Fisks, although they quickly evolved into something more aligned with Otto Octavius's own motives. Otto, you see, decided to sign up with Fisk as one of his own superpowered enforcers, simply because, well, he wanted to get his hands on the Baxter building, which the Fantastic Four were forced to abandon when Mayor Fisk's cronies came to seize any and all projects the FF was working on and arrest all the team members. Because, you know, they're illegal superheroes. They initially managed to capture Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, but their children, the Thing, and the Human Torch all managed to get away. In their place, Otto decided to create his own version of the team, scouring the multiverse for alternate versions of him, who also happen to be alternate versions of the FF's backup roster. So now we have the Superior 4 led by 616 Otto, and featuring Otto versions of Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and, you guessed it, the Hulk. Pretty great. Number 2, Recipe for a God. One group of the Eternals has a plan to defeat Druig by creating a god. They kidnap evil geneticist Mr. Sinister, who currently is a little less evil, working with the mutants instead of against them, of course, on Krakoa. With his and the Avengers' help, using their headquarters, which is the body of a dead Celestial, they set out to make their plan happen. The good news is they succeed, rewriting the programming of the Celestial to make it more aligned with their own beliefs and principles when it awakens. The bad news is the progenitor, which is the name of the Celestial, comes back to life only to inform our heroes that in 24 hours everyone on Earth will also be judged, as they feel those living there have caused so much harm that they too should perhaps be destroyed. They have till then to convince the progenitor that their first impression of Earth and of everyone on it is incorrect. Number 1, mutants equals deviants? So the funny thing is that Druig, while sort of fabricating a connection between deviants and mutants with dramatic interpretation of excess deviation, actually may have been onto something. When the Celestial comes online and threatens the world, the Quiet Council must decide what to do and possibly take action. However, as they are talking about using some potential secret weapons, Emma Frost reveals she is one of her own. She has made an alliance with the Deviants, who head to Krakoa to help in the fight against the Eternals. The hilarious and amazing part is when Crow reveals to Cyclops that Deviants can use mutant gates, likely thanks to their genetics being so similar to mutants. So perhaps mutants are deviants after all.